You can draw this in Procreate. You can draw these magical looking mushrooms in Procreate. All you need are the brushes that are already in the app. I will walk you through all the steps in this video, and you will be learning by doing. We will be using alpha lock, Gaussian blur, layer masks, and more, and I will teach you all about those features in Procreate. And if you like this video, then be sure to check out my other You Can Draw This videos as well. I've seen so many great results on Instagram. If you want to get a chance to have your work featured in my next video, then be sure to share it on Instagram and tag me in the image. And maybe we'll see your artwork in the next You Can Draw This video. Let's get started. The canvas we'll be using in this video is 2500 pixels by 2500 pixels. And I've made a color palette for you, so if you want to use the exact same colors I'm using in this tutorial, then you can just download them for free through a link in the description. We will start with the foreground, and we'll use this dark blue color, and we will go to the brushes and select the monoline brush, which is under calligraphy. And our brush size is 20% and opacity is set to 100%. And we will start making a foreground. We'll start just about here, and we will make kind of a wobbly line, because this is of course the dirt in which those magical looking mushrooms are growing. We'll go all the way to the right side. And now we can drag in the color just by dragging that circle onto our layer. And now we will move to the background. So we will need to make a new layer by clicking the plus here, and we will drag it below our foreground layer. Just pick up that layer and drag it underneath that foreground layer. And we will switch brushes now. We will go to airbrushing and select the soft brush. And we will start making a gradient in the background. First, let's pick this lighter blue. And I have my brush size set to about 22%. And let's just turn up the opacity to 100%. And let's start glazing in some color. Some lighter blue here, and we'll use this darker blue at the top. And I'm going to turn down the opacity for some more subtle effects. Let's go to 70%. And I'm going back to that lighter blue. And let's set the brush size to 30%. I want to get some variation in that background. Some lighter spots and also some darker spots. You don't have to give this too much thought. It's like a blurry background, which you can also see in a photo when you have a sharp looking foreground and a more blurry looking background. Let's also use this light purple. We can add some of that as well. There, and if you would like to soften the whole gradient soft look a little bit more, then you can go to the magic wand here and use Gaussian blur. And you can increase the blur by sliding your pen to the right. You can go all the way to 100%, but then you won't see any of those details that we made. So let's just do 5%. A very subtle blur. Now we'll make a new layer on top of this blurry background layer. And we will switch brushes. We will go to the soft airbrush. And let's pick this dark blue. My brush size is at 20% and the opacity is at 44%. And now let's just add some random branches in the background. Just some wobbly lines. And this will give our painting a bit more interest. It makes it look a little bit more interesting with a background like this. It gives some context to our mushrooms. So just place some random branches. Like this. And now let's also add some light effects. We'll use this light purple for that. Let me make the brush a little bit bigger. Let's go to 30%. And let's just add some random lights. It gives an extra little magical touch to our scene. Just randomly place some of these lights. Now let's blur this background just a little bit more by going to the magic wand again, and then use Gaussian blur and slide to the right just a little bit to, let's do 5% again. There, now we have a nice looking background. Let's work on that foreground a little bit more. We'll click layer 1, which is the foreground, and click the plus to add a new layer. And now we'll click this new layer and select clipping mask. This way, whatever we paint on layer 4 will only show up on the place where there are pixels on layer 1. So let's just demonstrate. Let me grab this pink. There you can see that the paint is only showing up on that layer 1. Even though it is all over the layer 4, you can still only see it where there are pixels on layer 1. Now we are going to add some texture to that foreground, and we will go to the texture brushes. Where are they? Here. Texture brushes, and we will use the Currawong brush to add some texture to this foreground. I have my brush size set to 10%, and I'll press only slightly to add a subtle effect, as if this is real soil. We can make the brush a bit smaller, let's say 7%. Just maybe a bit bigger, let's say 20. And I'm only using very slight pressure. I think the edge of the soil looks a bit too smooth right now, so let's fix that by going back to that layer 1 and selecting that dark color again. And we will use a charcoal brush. Right here, we will use the burnt tree. And I have the brush size set to 3%. And let's just go over that edge to make it look a bit more, well, soily, a bit more like soil, a bit more textured, because of course that foreground wouldn't look so smooth. Soil doesn't have these smooth lines. So let's just add this textured edge. Perhaps you know it already, but I actually have a Patreon page where I share lots of fully narrated digital art tutorials. So if you want to go more in depth and learn more about digital painting techniques, then be sure to check that out. I think that looks better. Let's get started drawing those magical looking mushrooms. We will use the monoline brush for that, which is under calligraphy. Let's select this color here. And let's set the brush to 10%. And let's draw the stems of our mushrooms first. We will make 3 mushrooms. And of course, we do need to make a new layer first. So go to your layer palette, select the layer that is on top of all the others, and then click the plus to make a new layer above the others. And on this one, we will start painting those stems. Let's make one diagonal here. And you can make it look a little bit wobbly, that line. And let's close this shape. And you can drag in the color to fill your little stem. Now let's make one here as well, also diagonal. And make a parallel line next to it. And close that shape again. So you can drag in the color like this and fill it. Now I've heard there were some people that had some trouble filling shapes sometimes. And they experienced that their whole canvas would fill with the color. So let me show you a little trick on how you can adjust the way your shape is filled. You can drag in the color and then you can slide like this and nothing will really happen. Well, if I turn it up to 100%, my whole screen will fill. And you can turn it down to lower that threshold. And that is extremely useful when you are using a pencil-like brush, for example, which is a little bit textured. If you lower that threshold, then you are able to fill shapes which are made with a chalk pencil, for example. So very useful, but it could happen that you have it at 100% and then every time you try to fill a shape, your whole canvas will fill. So that's what you can do to adjust that. Let's move on. Let's start drawing those little hoods on these mushrooms. We'll make a new layer again. We have layer 5 selected and click the plus to make a new layer. And we will select this nice pink color. And we still have the monoline brush selected. We will start making these hoods. First we'll make kind of like a half oval on top. And then we close the shape with some wobbly lines. And if you go too far, you can just use the eraser to fix that. And again, you can drag in the color to fill it. And let's go to this one on the left. Again, make a big oval and then close the shape with a wiggly, wavy line like this. And I will make another hood on the one in front and we'll make a new layer for that. So make sure you have layer 6 selected and click the plus to make a new one. And again, make half an oval and close the shape with a wavy line. And fix it if needed using the eraser. You can drag in the color to fill this shape. Now we have 3 basic mushrooms. For the next step, we will make a new layer below these mushroom layers. So let's click layer 4, which has that texture on it, and click the plus. So now we have a layer that is below the stems and below those hoods. And I want to get a good view of the mushrooms in the back. So I'll turn off the hood in front right now. And you can just click this little square to make it invisible. Now we're going to make the inside of the hood. Just start here on the outside and make a wavy line to the other side. And then be sure to close your shape by looping around. And now you can fill it like this. And let's do the same thing on this side. Make a wavy line to the other side and close your shape. Like that. And we will turn down the opacity of this layer so that hood has a little bit of a transparency. Just click the N on the layer and slide this to the left to 60%. And now it has a nice transparency. And we can turn on layer 7 again. Now let's have some fun and add some light to these mushrooms. We will make new layers again, and we will make these above these hood layers. First we'll make a new layer above layer 6, which has these 2 hoods on it. So click the plus and use a layer clipping mask. So whatever we paint will only show up on these hoods. And we will also pick another layer blending mode. We can do that by clicking the N, and then we'll go to add. And now we'll select another brush. We will go to airbrushing again and pick the soft brush. And we will pick this yellowish color. Our brush size is still, well, let's turn down our brush size to 14% and our opacity is at 70%. And now let's add some light to these mushrooms. Just glaze on top, near the top of that mushroom. And on this side, just add some light on top. And let's add an even brighter light by picking this yellow. Just a little bit of that brightest light on top. And let's do the same for the mushroom in front. So now click layer 7, which has that single hood on it. Click the plus and then select clipping mask. And again, click the N and set the layer blending mode to add. First we'll pick this yellow again. And gently glaze on top to add that light, and then we'll pick the brightest yellow again for that top. Next, let's have some fun with some luminance brushes. In the brush menu, we will go to Luminance right here and select the light brush. And we will go back to the hoods layer, like layer 6, the one with the 2 hoods. And we will select Alpha Lock. This kind of locks the pixels that are already on the layer, making it impossible to add pixels in places where there aren't any pixels yet. So we will only be able to paint on the pixels that are already there. Now we will pick the pink and we will start making some lines upwards towards that top of the mushroom. And my brush size is 7%. Just follow the shape of the mushroom and make it flow towards that top. Let's do the same for this one. Just follow that shape. Let's also go along this edge here. To lighten that up. And also here for this mushroom. And let's do the same on this layer with the single hood. Again, click the layer, select alpha lock, and make these lines towards the top of the mushroom. And for this one, we'll also add a little light along the edge. Just like that. And we'll do the same thing for the inside of the hood. So we need to go to this layer with the purple on it, layer 8. Click it again and use alpha lock. And we'll pick this purple. And again, we will make these lines going to the top of the mushroom. And also for this side. For our next step, we will start to work on the stems. They look a bit boring right now, don't you think? So let's go to that layer with the stems on it, layer 5, and click the plus to make a new layer. And we will clip this new layer to our stems layer. So what you need to do is click that new layer and select clipping mask. And we will set this layer to add. So we will add some light on this layer. To do that, we will go back to our airbrush, the soft brush right here. And let's pick this yellow first. We'll set our brush to 5% and we'll start painting on this left side of the stem. All the way down here. And on this stem, we will lighten the right side. And some of this, part of this stem here. And let's also use the pink right here to add a little bit of pink light as well. I'll make the brush a little bit smaller, let's say 2%. And the opacity is at 70. Just give it a little bit of a rim light. Now let's add another layer on top of this one by clicking the plus and selecting clipping mask again. And for this layer, we will pick multiply. So slide up and select multiply. This will make everything darker. And let's select the purple for now. And let's darken this right side here. Let's put our brush at 5%. Darken this one as well. And the left side here. Finally, one little touch, a final touch. As you can see, these stems, they don't really blend with the underground. Now to fix that, we can use a layer mask. Just go to the layer with the stems, click it, and select mask. Now using black as a color, we can mask part of this layer. And we will use this burnt tree charcoal for that. And now we'll just block some little parts of these stems. And that way they will blend with the underground a bit more. Just making some little dabs to make them blend. There it is! You did it! Magical looking mushrooms. See you next time for the next digital art tutorial.